The Narcissist and Parental Alienation, Part 5. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor, continuing with my important series about the way that the narcissist causes parental alienation or pleads parental alienation as a response to situations where their own conduct has been used against them to prevent them having involvement with their children. Jill Montes had always wanted a big family. In 2008, she already had a 5-year-old daughter, Paige, with a man she'd divorced, and she was finding regular work as an actor in Los Angeles. She decided to adopt an infant son, Robert. The next year, she met Thomas Weininger, who had a master's degree in engineering and business. They met on eHarmony. Note, red flag, hunting ground. He wanted to talk a lot about faith and God, and that wooed me. Facade management, triangulation, she said. She also welcomed his interest in Robert, whom she was insecure about raising alone. Potential vulnerability. In 2011, the couple married and settled near San Diego, and Montes quit acting. Soon, she later said in court filing, Weininger was shoving, insulting and threatening her, often in front of the kids. Physical violence, use of insult, use of threat, triangulation with children. Lack of emotional empathy for her, lack of emotional empathy for the children. He promised to change, promised changed, and she hoped he could, emotional thinking. In 2012, their first child, Claire, was born, and Eden followed in 2015. The children are being identified only by their middle names. Later that year, Montes accused Weininger of dragging Paige across a room. Physical violence towards child. Montes sought a restraining order, which was ultimately denied, and kicked him out. He rented a room in a house nearby, where he regularly hosted the 3 younger kids. Sometimes Robert went there by himself. Montes filed for divorce, threat to control, in February 2018. Under an informal agreement, the kids continued spending time at Weininger's place. But at a hearing that fall, a 10-year-old Robert testified that during an argument over his math homework, Weininger had repeatedly grabbed, shoved and spanked him. Physical violence towards child. Montes filed a petition for a domestic violence restraining order, which Weininger fought. Naturally, it's a threat to his control, saying he hadn't mistreated Robert. Denial. In the end, Raitkin, the judge presiding over the divorce, signed a stay-away order prohibiting Weininger from contact with Robert, but it did not address the allegation of violence. Weeks later, Weininger asked Raitkin to name him Robert's legal father, assertion of control, arguing that he'd helped raise the boy from toddlerhood. Raitkin ruled in his favour and ordered the custody evaluation. In court papers he filed on July 19, 2019, the day after the evaluator was appointed, Weininger accused Montes of parental alienation. Provocation, use of parental alienation as a means of nullifying threat to control and asserting control. Often, according to Mayer, the dynamic of a custody case shifts radically once alienation is raised. It's like the table turns 180 degrees, and now the only bad parent in the room is the alleged alienator, she said. An abuse allegation fades out of view, she said, and any attempts by the mother to limit the father's access are seen as suspicious. It's almost as if, like Hester Prynne in The Scarlet Letter, she's been branded with a flaming red A, Mayer said. This shows a shortcoming, of course, on the part of the courts in their failure to recognise a narcissist at work. The narcissist in this instance has engaged in physical violence towards children, and physical violence towards the former intimate partner primary source, use of insult, use of threat, triangulation. There is plenty of evidence to demonstrate that that individual is both a narcissist and an abuser, However, when those allegations are made against him, with evidence to support it, it threatens his sense of control. And therefore what he does, because the mother, rightfully, is trying to keep him away from the children, he turns around and argues parental alienation. Accordingly, he uses the very protective act that the mother is engaging in, keeping her children away from the narcissist, as a means to attack her. Rather than the courts look at it and think, well, he has been accused of, and there is evidence to support, poor behaviour, violence, etc. towards both mother and children, therefore it makes sense that mother would want to keep her children away from him, they fail to take that into account. They also fail to recognise that they're dealing with a narcissist, which means that the allegations that are put forward by the mother are going to amount to a threat to control, and therefore the narcissist has the knee-jerk reaction of crying, parental alienation, parental alienation, parental alienation. The article continues by explaining that Montez soon lost ground in court. In January 2020, Rakin ordered Robert into the care of a therapist, Mitra Sarkosh, who has since provided aftercare for at least one reunification program. Sarkosh saw Robert and his father together about 20 times, charging $200 an hour. But by summer, she had halted the session, saying Robert's anger was not improving. $4,000 for no improvement. In a report filed in court, Sarkosh appeared to blame Montez. Living with her, Robert was saturated with negativity about his father, she wrote. There may be a need for new interventions. Citing patient confidentiality laws, Sarkosh declined an interview request. She wrote, also in my opinion, X is saturated with negativity about his father. Given all the evidence mentioned above and a lot more that is not in his report, it seems that he's immersed in an environment that has openly reinforced mother's experience of the father to the children. 1 hour of contact with his father in therapy cannot undo what his entire environment continues to reinforce the messages he receives about his father. Now, this is interesting. We haven't seen what this evidence is, but is it the case that the mother is making the mistake of talking about the father's behaviour with the child and therefore falling into the trap of bad-mouthing the father, albeit based on evidence, which of course then in the mind of the therapist creates an environment reinforcing the negativity? The better route, of course, is to resist that temptation driven by emotional thinking and not badmouth the abusive parent, however tempting it might be, however unfair it feels when that narcissist is smearing you and you feel like you should get some action back against them. All that will happen is if you badmouth, even if it's based on evidence, the behaviour of the narcissist parent to any of your children, two things will happen. One, the narcissist will know about this, and you kick the hornet's nest, causing the narcissist to try and hoover you, and perhaps level parental alienation allegations against you. Secondly, you run the risk of creating an environment, as one here that the therapist talks about, that you create an arena of negativity, which could be picked up upon by a therapist or a court-appointed psychiatrist, who may then report it, making you look like you're the problem. Robert was relieved to be finished with Sarkosh, Montez said. He started seeing a new therapist, and during the first session, he told the therapist he'd been sexually abused. On November the 18th, 2020, at the direction of the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, Robert called Weininger to try to elicit a confession. When that failed, the department paused its investigation, but the child welfare inquiry proceeded. On December the 1st, the California Health and Welfare Agency issued a report substantiating Robert's claims. The agency is worried that if given the opportunity, Tom Weininger will sexually abuse Robert again, the report says. Neither Weininger nor his divorce attorney, Tamantha Clemens, responded to requests for interviews or to a list of detailed questions. In a motion for custody he filed on December the 8th, 2020, Weininger argued that Robert's allegations had been orchestrated by Montez, and that her alienation will not stop until she is restrained by the court. Once again, the allegation of sexual abuse threatens the narcissist's sense of control, and he responds by saying, I haven't done anything wrong. She has been pouring poison in the ear of the child, and she won't stop until she's restrained by the court. Look, it's once again evidence of her parental alienation. The welfare agency sent Raitkin its report on January the 4th, 2021, according to a cover sheet reviewed. But Raitkin was still awaiting the custody evaluation, which she'd assigned to a psychologist, Miguel Alvarez. In 2009, Alvarez co-authored a handbook for parents in custody disputes. While the manual spells out in detail how to prove an alienation claim, it offers no specific guidance on how to prove a claim of abuse. According to the report, part of which was reviewed at a San Diego County courthouse, a personality test Alvarez administered suggested that Montez suffered from extreme hypervigilance and persecutory fears. Of course, that is highly likely to be her response to the abuse that she's received in dealing with a narcissist. People with these traits, Alvarez wrote, are often quick to anger and overreact to perceived or imagined threats. Weinenger's scores on the same test were normal, Alvarez wrote, and his performance on psychosexual and polygraph tests was inconsistent with Robert's allegations of sexual abuse. Again, what I would point out here is that polygraphs don't work because the narcissist believes the lies and therefore they're not going to be picked up on. The 136-page evaluation cost Robert's parents more than $90,000. Alvarez did not respond to requests for comment. Raitkin reviewed the evaluation just before the October 28, 2021 hearing. Alvarez's findings were exactly what she'd expected, she said. She has a prejudicial view of the judge. In her view, the situation called for immediate action. She put Claire, aged 8, and Eden, aged 6, in their father's custody that day, and she sent Robert, 13, to stay with his football coach. That was for Weinenger's protection, she said, until Robert was detoxified. She said he'd be prone to false claims of abuse. Raitkin suggested family bridges as a solution. She'd had really good success with the program in another case, she said, and she thought it would ease Robert's transition. Without it, the boy wouldn't get better, she said, and his sisters stood to benefit too. Weinenger agreed. Under an order Raitkin signed on January the 3rd, 2022, the children would attend a Family Bridges workshop with their father from January 11th to January the 14th and then return to his home. Montez was barred from contact with the children for at least 90 more days. Raitkin also prohibited the children from communicating with their older sister, their maternal grandmother, and anyone else who might interfere with their healing. Contact would resume at Raitkin's discretion, depending upon how well everyone was cooperating. Thus, at this juncture, we have a situation where, as a consequence of individuals who clearly don't recognize narcissists, have created evidence which has gone against the victim of the narcissist, the mother, and resulting in a situation where the children are not allowed to have contact with her for 90 days. This all flows from an inability to deal with the evidence correctly and a failure to identify narcissists. I'll continue with my analysis of this and other aspects of parental alienation in Part 6.